In today's cultural climate, at least in the Western world, there appears to be growing hostility towards men and boys. Primarily male actions and behaviors, especially those associated with traditional masculinity, have become targets for those with particular political agendas. No matter who you are, if you attempt to operate in a continually discouraging or outright antagonistic environment, then you're bound to be negatively affected by it eventually. In addition to discouragement, mockery, and hostility, there's also an ostensibly poignant feeling of hopelessness among the younger generations of men. The path forward isn't as evident as it once was, and perhaps this is also a symptom of the increased societal hostility/apathy. Evidently, there's always pressure no matter who you are and where you come from. Pressure from yourself and others to succeed in life, which typically involves balancing a career with family obligations. I've experienced these pressures myself to various degrees, and sometimes they've injuriously affected my mentality. Even so, I ultimately managed by ignoring the outside noise, but I also realized that these expectations will always be there in the back of my mind. With that said, pressure and expectations can be a positive force because some stress is necessary in order to compel action. If I'm going to chase after what I desire, then I require at least some motivation to acquire it. However, as with anything else, if there's too much strain, then eventually a person will break. I've witnessed this phenomenon with my brother over the last few years, and it has been heartbreaking to put it mildly. Essentially, he has struggled to ascertain which direction he wishes to travel in terms of career aspirations, and the path hasn't been as evident for him. This has certainly weighed on his psyche, and it only exacerbated his sorrow during some moments. He feels the expectations from others, primarily our parents, but he also puts pressure on himself like we all do. This combination has broken him down during some moments, but he's doing better now because I've supported him through those moments. When you know what it's like to feel immense despair, hopelessness, and a lack of purpose, then it's easy to empathize. Although he's still trying to figure it all out, his confidence has been reignited for the time being, which is a step in the right direction. But what about those who have no support? Nobody to reach out to when they're struggling? What do they do when they aren't strong enough to endure by themselves anymore? For many men and boys, this has become a reality, and today's discussion attempts to explore this phenomenon. I've heard other more prominent commentators remark that men and boys are falling behind in today's world, so I decided to research the validity of this notion. I will outline some conclusions that can be reached through statistics before I provide my own commentary on this matter. Let me know what you think. Are men and boys falling behind in today's society? If so, what are some possible explanations and solutions for this problem? Comment below. To begin, it's easy to make a claim and not back it up with evidence, like the mainstream media often does these days. So, instead of looking foolish and intellectually dishonest, I did some background research to see what the data reveals. The data I utilized for this discussion primarily focuses on Canada, but there's also some US statistics, and they're all cited in the description if you want to read them yourself. I realize that statistics are boring, but bear with me as they're vital for this discussion. Alright, here we go. A statistic that's frequently cited pertains to college enrollment data, which demonstrates that women are outnumbering men on college campuses by significant margins. This trend has continued for at least the past 2 decades. The evident conclusion is that less men are deciding to embark on a college education, and/or more men are bailing out of college. Whatever the reason, the data supports this claim. The first chart from Statistics Canada, or StatsCan, notes that the number of female students enrolling in post-secondary education from 2016 to 2021 is greater than male students in every Canadian province. No matter the in-group fluctuation from year to year, the trend is still the same in every province. More women are enrolling overall. Another comparable statistic is the high school graduation rate, which once again the data from StatsCan demonstrates that women outnumber men in this regard. This was true in all age groups, with the lone exception being the over 65 age group, where graduation rates between the sexes were roughly equivalent. What about the United States? Is this trend occurring in that country as well? Indeed, Richard Reeves and Ember Smith in their article make 3 key assertions backed by empirical data. 1. More women than men are earning bachelor's degrees in every US state. 2. More women than men are graduating from high school, both on time and with extended time. And 3. At the primary school level, girls are performing at a half-grade to full-grade level above boys for literacy skills across the country. Meanwhile, Numeracy is where the performance is roughly the same, or better for boys depending on the state. The results for literacy and numeracy values in Canada are roughly the same, albeit less dramatic and with more statistical deviation depending on the age group. Enough about education. What about mental health? The data is generally more blended for these results, at least in Canada. From 2015 to 2019, the increase was similar for those among both sexes who reported an improved mental state and that they sought counseling for mental health problems. The notable statistic from this chart was that more men than women reported experiencing suicidal thoughts, even though they both increased from 2015 to 2019. Another report on mental and substance use disorders found that men were more likely to abuse substances, illicit drugs, and alcohol, whereas women were more likely to suffer from mental disorders, like depression and anxiety. Nevertheless, the highest rates of depression and substance use were among youths aged 15 to 24. This evidently means that more boys and young men in this day and age are suffering from these issues compared to their older counterparts. The last statistic I'll cite pertains to unemployment, which is higher for men than women, and this is largely due to men outnumbering women in the workforce. Not totally surprising, but still significant, nonetheless. Alright, now that the statistics are highlighted, I'll provide some commentary. Prior to researching the evidence, I was inclined towards the claim of men and boys falling behind being true based on my anecdotal experiences in high school and university. However, I wanted to ensure that this claim was based on a firm foundation of empirical evidence. When I saw the data, let's just say that I wasn't too surprised once my suspicions were corroborated. So, what should we make of the findings? Evidently, we can conclude that this is a substantial problem, not only for men and boys, but also for society at large. Possessing a basic education provides a solid foundation for the rest of life, no matter which career path one chooses. If you can't think for yourself, then you'll be at the mercy of others who will dictate how you should think and which direction you should walk. Indeed, we witness this phenomenon with cancel or outrage culture, where the media ostensibly dictates the issues we should become infuriated about next. For the critical mind, instead of reacting emotionally, the first question should be, is this actually worth becoming angry about? And more importantly, what is it a distraction from? Indeed, because most of the time it's smoke and mirrors, like the recent weather balloon nonsense. While we were so focused on looking up towards the sky, we neglected to pay attention to what was occurring on the ground. The old saying is that knowledge is power, and although cliché, it still holds water. If you're unaware that a problem exists, then you cannot take any steps to mitigate it. Having the next generation of men be undereducated or deficient in basic skills isn't a positive notion because society will surely suffer. Indeed, as the world becomes increasingly more complex with the machines that we're building, we evidently require people to operate and repair them when they break down. Men still comprise the majority of the workforce, and if they aren't sufficiently trained for their tasks, then the implications could be catastrophic. The ongoing supply chain issues over the last few years is a direct example of this phenomenon. Note, I'm not remarking that every man should possess a college degree, nor that college is right for everyone. I instead take the view that they should express their autonomy by choosing the path that they see fit. However, the evident reality is that a high school diploma isn't enough anymore for the majority of careers. At least some post-secondary training is necessary, especially for more technical jobs. The labor shortages we're seeing will only become exacerbated if the current trends continue, which once again further contributes to societal stagnation. You might pipe up and say, but why would I go to an environment that's hostile to me? No matter if it's passively antagonistic or actively hostile, it's not conducive towards my success and well-being. Indeed, but the counter to this notion is that the world is inherently hostile no matter who you are. The natural elements of cold and harsh weather will kill us if we don't take steps to survive. Even when that's taken care of, we'll encounter opposition as nobody is on the exact same page all the time. To obtain anything worth having, you'll have to successfully operate in environments where people either don't like you or they're somewhat apathetic towards you. School effectively performs this function because it prepares you for operating environments where you don't get along with everybody. When you embark on a career, this trend will continue, but in different settings. The school system is undoubtedly flawed, but there's also only so much that it can do for an individual. At the end of the day, you can give someone all they need to succeed, and they'll still fail. Furthermore, where there are stories of failure, there are also stories of success, people who have overcome severe hindrances and overwhelming odds. Ultimately, What it ostensibly comes down to, then, is mindset. Will you find an excuse, or will you find a way to succeed? When you're falling behind, you have a choice. You can either keep letting yourself sink, or you can turn around and start making your way back to the surface. It's certainly arduous and painful during some moments, but it can be done. The system and society may be broken, but it doesn't account for one's mentality and other variables. The symptom of men and boys falling behind is likely attributable to a turbulent home life and insufficient guidance, in addition to a failing education system. When one or both are lacking in some manner, then focusing on success becomes even more difficult. Boys evidently need their fathers, or at least a father figure around, in order to guide them. However, that's also assuming that these figures aren't detrimental to their well-being. Having a father around who's injurious to the child will inevitably cause more harm than good. The same principle applies for their mothers. For many boys and young men, they unfortunately don't have positive role models, and the cycle of destitution continues because of it. Positive influences are needed as the mind is heavily influenced by its environment and the people who occupy it. Finally, men and boys could say, "to hell with it," and bail out of society, but I don't believe that benefits anyone, not even those who choose to bail out. This is because problems frequently get worse over time when they're ignored. If you desire for things to change, then you must be the catalyst for that change. You must take action to correct some inadequacy. If we want the situation to improve for the next generations, in addition to ourselves in the short term, then we must get involved somehow. It doesn't have to be running for a political office, but setting a good example is an excellent way to start. Become a representation of strength and virtue in this weak and sinful world. If you do that, then you'll inspire those in your immediate vicinity to improve themselves, and perhaps the world will become a better place, one step at a time. When my brother needed me to be strong for him, that's what I did. My support and strength inspired him to regain his confidence because he witnessed the example that I was setting. A saying that I often think about is this: be strong. You never know who you're inspiring. Even if you don't have someone who needs your immediate assistance or looks to you as an example, become stronger for yourself and become the person you needed during your moments of struggle. I had to do just that, and I'm a much better man because of it. If there are people you know who are struggling and falling behind, then reach out and pull them up. Lord knows, perhaps all they need to regain their confidence is a helping hand and a few encouraging words from someone who believes in them. Ultimately, we should be running towards the danger, hostility, and chaos, not away from it, especially if we're serious about changing things rather than complaining about it. Performing these actions will ensure that a better world and a better generation of men and boys are left behind after we pass away.